Kazakhstan's presence in the UFC continues to grow with the signing of two new Kazakh flyweights. Both Asu Amobayev and Azat Maksum will be making their UFC debuts shortly. First up is Azat Maksum. In this video, I'm going to be looking at Azat Maksum. I'm going to be looking at his skills, what his capabilities are, and try to make an assessment of how he's going to do in the UFC. Now, before we get into some of the footage, start to break down his skills as a fighter, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Now let's jump into it. First, let's take a look at Azat Maksum's record and some of the places that he's fought. So I looked at his Instagram and he has listed that he's training at DDV team in Kazakhstan currently. He is 28 years old and fights at flyweight. If we look down at his record here, it looks like he started training in 2017, going pro, fighting in an organization called Jek, which is a small local Kazakh promotion. And you can see as soon as he went pro in 2017, which was not too long ago, he fought 5 times in 1 year, fought once in 2018, and then has been pretty active fighting a couple times every year ever since then. So he's racked up these wins pretty quickly in his pro career. After fighting for this Asian Warriors in OFC, he fought for Octagon in some of their early events. And in this Octagon Global 2 fight, he actually won the Octagon Flyweight Championship. So he is a former champion. He has this win over Altenbek Magas, and I believe he vacated the belt once he signed with Niza and started fighting around different places. So he fought for Niza, and then he went back to Octagon, and then fought for Brave a few times before returning to Octagon, which is a pretty major Kazakh promotion. I am going to be looking at these last 3 fights in Octagon going back to December of 2021. So let's take a look. All right, so this first fight is a fight between Azamat Karabekov of Kyrgyzstan against Azat Maksum of Kazakhstan. This took place at Octagon 26, which was a collab with Gorilla MMA 46 in December of 2021. This was in Almaty, Kazakhstan. So what I want you to look at in this fight is notice Azat Maksum's pace. Something that, as I watched some of his older fights, he fought at a much slower pace than this, and I've seen him gradually just fight at a faster and faster pace as his fights have gone on. So look at this fight. I'll kind of point out some of the key things that he does. We've got a low kick there from Azat, and there he goes for the shot pretty quickly. You'll notice that in a lot of his fights, he is basically fighting to set up that takedown shot. There he got the double leg without much resistance and was able to get the fight to the ground very quickly, throwing some pretty hard shots on the ground, and he's got the back mount. His opponent not really offering much in the way of defense, and there he is already locking up that rear naked choke to get the tap. So this was a very easy win for Azat Maksum, 100% one-sided, took likely 0 damage in this fight, and very impressive showing, although I'm not really sure if the competition was really up to hang, to be quite honest. But either way, this was another win for Azat Maksum's record. There he is with the owner of Octagon, and there you have it. All right, next up, we've got another flyweight fight against Alan Gabriel of Brazil. This fight took place in June of 2022 at Octagon 31 in Almaty, Kazakhstan. At the time, Alan Gabriel was 12-6 and Azat Maksum was 15-0. So he was looking to add another win to his record. Kind of wonder if at this point he was having trouble finding opponents. He wasn't even fighting for the Octagon belt. At this time, he's not the champion. He's just fighting in non-title main events against, I guess, the best opponents that they could find for him, and he just kind of blows through guys. So I'm not going to go over this entire fight, but I am going to kind of skip to some key parts so you can see what Azat Maksum is all about. So in the last fight, I was telling you to look at his pace, and in that fight, he was able to get the job done really quickly. And in this one, I want you to look at that pace as well, just sort of the speed of which he operates, and we'll kind of get to see what his game plan is in this fight.
So he threw a couple wild punches there, throwing some feints. His opponent threw some punches, but way out of range. And again, with the kick. A lot of Azat Maksum's MO is that 1-2. And there he goes for the takedown shot, and a little wild getting it down to the ground, but was able to get it down there and is now on the ground with his opponent in full guard. So one thing, if I'm going to have a criticism of Azat Maksum, is that I see that he spends a lot of time in full guard and has a hard time passing to side control or to a more dominant position like full mount or even a half guard. He spends a lot of time in full guard. Here his opponent is throwing up a triangle, and while I haven't seen a whole lot of situations where he is stuck in bad positions like submissions, he does often leave himself open, or at least for his opponents to get started, but usually he'll kind of explode out of positions like this quickly. Here he's stuck in this triangle. His opponent trying to break down his posture, but Maksum, one thing about Azat Maksum is that he is deceptively very, very strong. He doesn't come off as a big hulking guy, but he is very strong. He's very explosive. I think that's where his strength is his ability to just kind of explode in or out of postures and situations, get him out of bad situations. And here he just got out of this triangle choke, kind of in a standing guard, and now he is back to the feet. So interesting choice there for Azat Maksum to get things back to the feet. He was unable to really mount any kind of offense on the ground there, and while his opponent was able to get him in that triangle choke. So for Azat Maksum, he is more opt to just try and get back to the feet and start things over from square one. Goes for a body kick there, a couple wild punches. Maksum throws really, really hard, but not always the best accuracy with his punches. There he lands a nice right hand, but I wonder if sometimes if he were to be a little bit more patient, if he would be able to land his shots a little bit better. There he lands a good right hand. His 1-2 is pretty nice. He's very fast with his punches. But a lot of times what I notice is that he is not really in the game to just stand and strike for a full fight. A lot of times he is using his strikes to set up his takedowns, which he does that typically very well. If he feels like he has a high success chance of just being able to go for the shot, if the fight is early, he's dry, you'll see him go for the shot outright. But other times, most of the time, you'll see him using his strikes to set up takedowns. And you'll see that more and more as his career goes on, that he uses his strikes to set up the takedown. So here, after dropping his opponent to the ground, he is back in the full guard, or I guess with an open guard against Gabriel. Maksum able to throw a couple little short elbows there, but not a lot of offense. I think if he were to grow in this position, he would not only get out of this triangle, but use the triangle position as an opportunity to advance into like a side mount or a full mount. And there he is able to spin and sort of take the back, but using it more for a wrestling offense rather than for a rear naked choke in this opportunity. Drags him back to the ground and looks like he's going to punch until the end of the bell. So now I've jumped ahead to the third round. The second round was a lot more of the same, with Maksum dragging his opponent to the ground into full guard and really unable to own a lot of meaningful offense, but all the while able to at least control the fight, land little things here and there. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this third round so we can kind of see what Maksum is doing in the third round compared to the first round, how his energy systems are doing. As far as I can tell, he is not one to gas hard. He does push a pretty strong pace, but It seems like he is holding up pretty well. He's not looking too tired, which is definitely a good sign going into the UFC, fighting a lot of fighters that are going to push him really hard. So his opponent, on the other hand, has spent the better part of the fight off of his back, and he's looking a little bit more worn here. But Maksum, again, throwing that right hand. It's definitely the most accurate of all of his strikes, that right hook. But looked for Maksum there. He goes for the takedown shot. And in the third round, when he senses his opponent is a little bit more tired, he's able to just go for it and get it. With this opponent, he's not been offering up a whole lot of meaningful takedown defense. And so Maksum has pretty much been able to take him down at will. But he's kind of trying to stack him here. And look at there, actually into a half guard position, but opponent turns it into opportunity for a leg lock, and we're back sort of in a full guard, open guard position, trying to kind of pass here, but his opponent is pulling him back into full guard. So we need to watch this. This is something to definitely make note of as he's going into the UFC, is if he's getting trapped in positions like these versus being able to move to full mount positions or move to the back, places where he's able to finish the fight. But I'm going to go ahead and pause things right here as the fight pretty much carries on like this throughout the end of the third round, and Azat Maksum wins a unanimous decision. But let's go ahead and jump to the next and most recent fight in Octagon. Last fight, this fight is against Fabricio Nunes at Octagon 39. This fight took place January of 2023, so about 6 months before his UFC debut. This was in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Fabricio Nunes of Brazil was an undefeated opponent at 8-0 at this time, just 25 years old when he fought. So they were at least able to find a very young opponent for Maksum. So there you see Maksum. You're going to see a much faster pace from him in this fight. He is going really, really hard for this takedown. He's kind of just like all over the place. He's a little bit wild with it. He's using a lot of brute force in this fight. I kind of wonder if he looked at the last fight where he was just kind of hanging around in positions and unable to finish the fight, was frustrated with that, and so he's turned up the dial a couple notches, really trying to just gun for that finish with everything he has. So now he's going for trying to throw his opponent to the ground. And there he goes. Gets him down to the ground. And now he is going to watch him here. He's just going to try and like put on this submission. Even without getting the hooks in, he's really just like gunning hard for this finish, even before he has all of the proper technique to get him locked down. And that's something that I think could work well against lower level opponents in the UFC, but he's definitely going to need to tighten things up and be a little bit more patient as he fights guys higher in the flyweight division. So there you see him going for the choke in a very kind of sideways position, one hook in, one hook out. Obviously doesn't get it, but he's still working. He's in the open guard of Nunes, and he's locking him back in position. So let's see if he's learned anything or how he's going to adjust to that. Instead, we're seeing him stack and stand back up, and rather than get back up to the feet, he's going to try and just keep the position. And as his opponent scrambles, he takes the back, which is great. Not settling to just get right back into the full mount. And there he's got one hook locked in. He's throwing some little punches here and there. Nothing with a whole lot of damage, but just to keep his opponent thinking. And there he is. He's got one hook back in. Starting to set up the choke even without that other hook in. Starting to slide under the neck there. You can tell he just really, really, really wants this finish as soon as possible. He is not... He is interested in just getting this finish as quickly as possible. He does not want to go to the judges again. He is potentially trying to punch his ticket to the UFC. I don't know what conversations were like with him at the UFC at this point, if he had been told, win this fight or finish this fight and you'll get in. But obviously he's wanting to make a big impression and get the finish here. His opponent, on the other hand, tying him up, trying to slow things down. And then there the referee is standing him back up, largely thanks to Nunes controlling the posture of Maksum. Nunes trying to land some strikes while he can before the fight eventually heads back to the canvas. Maksum with some wild punches. And there he goes, very nice. Sets up the takedown with some strikes, gets back into his opponent's open guard. His opponent has one butterfly hook in and kind of working maybe for a triangle or an arm bar. But as the scramble happens, he once again takes the back. And you know he's just thinking rear naked choke right now. Really trying to just manifest it to make it happen. And we're kind of all over the place here. A little bit wild with these transitions, and he gets pulled back into half guard and back into full guard. So, Maksum can definitely get a little bit wild, not only on the feet, but a little bit on the ground as well. In this fight, this might just be a this fight kind of thing, but he seems a little bit sloppy on the ground and a little bit too in love with the finish. And while he doesn't want to go to a decision, he needs to be a little bit more patient to set things up, keep things a little bit more tight. And now he's going for the Darce choke. Very nice. He's got that tight, and there's the tap. So, very good performance from Azat Maksum. Overall, I think he's going to do pretty well in the UFC. I definitely think he'll probably win a couple to start things off against his opponent this weekend, Tyson Nam. I think it's a perfect test for him, fighting a really experienced veteran, but that's still kind of just outside the rankings. I'm not sure if Maksum is going to be able to make it to the higher end of the division just yet. He needs to tighten a couple things up, especially with the grappling, and tighten things up a little bit with the striking especially. But I think that he'll do well. His conditioning is really sharp. He's got a really exciting style that is very flyweighty. It's very fast-paced. A lot of big movements, a lot of fun scrambles. So I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. He's going to be very popular in the UFC. I think he'll probably get a couple wins, maybe a couple losses here and there, but I think we're going to get to see him for a long time. He is only 28 years old, so we'll get a good, 7-8 years out of him if he's able to stay in the UFC. And let's see how he does this weekend against Tyson Nam.
That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for going with me on that deep dive into Azat Maksum's skills. I'll be back soon with another video diving into an aspect of Asian MMA. Remember that I've got a live podcast every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific. Would love for you to join me. Feel free to ask me any questions you have, but until then, enjoy the fights.